Oakland TV. We love it. Oaklander, Oaklander, Oakland TV. We love it. Piece of heaven with our new exit off 287. We can be seen on channel 20, that's our team. Oaklander, gotta love that. Oaklander, wanna see that. Oaklander, Oaklander, Oakland TV. We love it! Oaklander, Oaklander.
Good evening, and welcome to the Oaklander, TCI's new kid on the block. I'm your host, Al DiGiacomo, and in the months ahead, the staff of the Oaklander will bring new and interesting stories from our town's past and present. Our goal is to foster community awareness and participation through the means of public access television. As you probably already know, 1995 marks the 300th anniversary of our town's founding, with many events scheduled throughout the year. The Oaklander will spotlight the people who mold and shape our community, as well as the ones who keep the spirit of our founding fathers alive and well in this beautiful town. Tonight on our show are two such people. Our first guest is the president of Vocal and pens the column Vocal View each week in the Suburban News. Please welcome Miss Carolyn Carg. Welcome, Carolyn.
Thank you, Al.
I understand you had a mentor who lit the Vocal flame. Would you tell us about this person?
Yeah, well, it was about 8.5 years ago, and I had read a letter to the editor in the Suburban News, surprisingly enough, that a woman was wanting volunteers to help her collect signatures to help save the mountains. So I called her, and we made a date to meet down there. And as we were standing there waiting for people to go in and out, she would say, "Did you by any chance hear about the development that's going up at so-and-so?" And I'd say, "No." "Well, did you hear about the development going up at so-and-so?" And this went on to many, many developments. And that woman is Edith Seltenheim, whom I always call Godmother, because as far as I'm concerned, she is Vocal's godmother. And the day after that, my next-door neighbor and I went down to the planning board, and we pulled out all the plans of all the projects that were on the books for the town and sent a town-wide mailing of 4,000 to people in town, asking them to come to a meeting down at Valley Middle School when they were hearing about the then Riverbend project.
Well, I understand that you have lived in Oakland for 32 years. Mm-hmm. What is the most pressing issue that you see changing the townscape in Oakland?
Broadly, if I could wish 287 away, could I do that? I would wish 287 away.
I see.
I would also wish a train engineer who would lay on his whistle less long during the night. But basically, the thing that really worries me is that with the state government changing as it does, there are increasingly breaks given to developers which are not beneficial to the environment, because Oakland was started first and foremost as an environmental group.
Well, I'm sure you get a lot of letters pertaining to Route 287. What seems to be the main complaint from the people who border the highway?
Noise.
The noise.
Some people say the dirt, but almost everyone says the noise. As a matter of fact, this last week, in my column, I had asked for people who had had problems with their water and problems with noise on 287, and I got 27 calls on the water and 24 calls on the noise on 287. And I know that there's some kind of formula that for everybody who calls, there are a certain number who agree but don't. And I don't know what that is.
On the same fact of Route 287, why do you think the Department of Transportation has taken so long to address the simple fact of just putting up a sign for that vanishing lane?
I wish I could tell you. I was out of state this year, in April, and I received a phone call from a woman who reads the column. I had call forwarded to where I was. And she told me about this disappearing lane because I had left the state before the highway was opened in November. And so I called and I asked my husband and a couple of other people who were still around here to check it out. And they said, yes, absolutely. The fast lane of 208, where 287 and 208 join, the fast lane of 208 disappears. So I called Bob Hammer, borough administrator, and he confirmed it through the police. And he started writing and calling the DOT virtually weekly, and I know that because I call him virtually weekly. And they keep, well, actually many times they have said, we painted out the misleading lines. They hadn't. Many times they have said, we put up signs. They hadn't. When they finally did put up signs, they put one on 287 and one on 208 after the point where you'd have to do that merge. And each one indicates only that there's a small ramp coming on. It does not indicate the merging of two major highways.
Well, I read in your column that there was a report of an accident. Luckily, there has not been a major calamity at this point. But just to switch gears here, what other environmental issues seem to be pressing the town as a result to either 287 or any other development?
Well, the biggest one right now that I've been working on since July is the fact that there was an enormous amount of illegal dumping of, I don't know whether it's not clean fill. You might call it fill, but it's not clean fill legally, up at the Boy Scout camp, Camp Tamarack. And I only found out about it because a couple who lived up there on Skyline Drive called me after reading the column one day and said, you know, there's been a lot of dump trucks going in up there. And so, again, I called Bob Hammer, the man upon whom I rely heavily to push these things for the town. He went up there that very afternoon and called in a number of government agencies, the DEPE, the Bergen County Health Department, and the Bergen County Soil Conservation District. And it seems when Mr. Hammer called the hauler himself admitted to 650 dump trucks. And the people who found it and called me identified the stuff as office garbage, as huge chunks of concrete. They said there was some asphalt, that there were many things that would disqualify this from being clean fill. So at present, the scouts are in front of the planning board, and we'll see where we go from here.
Okay. What is the most commonly asked question of vocal members?
I have no idea. When they call me, they usually call about a particular matter that I've written about in the column.
They have no pet issue that they
well, people seem to call with all kinds of crazy stuff. For instance, one would normally think that the couple who saw the dump trucks going into the Boy Scout place would have called the town, but they didn't. They called me. And I don't know the reason for this. And I've asked some of them why they don't call the town. And their answer is that they just feel more comfortable talking to me because they know that I guarantee them that any calls are confidential.
I see. In the 8 years of writing the vocal column, what's been your most troubling story to have to write?
I would say the one that really bothered me the most was this ongoing problem between the two high schools, Ramapo Hills and Indian Hills. I think it's absolutely tragic that the board is having to have so much of its time taken up by something which has nothing to do with education. That is the story that really bothers me the most. It isn't the most devastating. The most devastating is the one about the Scouts, because our river is directly below the area where all of this stuff was dumped. And our aquifer and our river have a positive and negative flow, which means that sometimes the river flows down into the aquifer and sometimes the aquifer flows up into the river. And the DEP told me years ago, anything that goes into our river eventually goes into our drinking water.
That is true. What goes up must come down.
Yeah.
Well, how is the Vocal View membership drive? Has it been a success? And how may our viewers contact you to join Vocal?
Well, if they receive the Suburban News. The address is there. It's Vocal, Box 174 in Oakland. And it's the dues are only $5, which is what they've been ever since the beginning. We don't do this to make money. We do this to make people feel that they are a part of something that's active. And so far, we are up 26% over our last drive.
Would it be too personal to ask how many members you have to your organization? Okay, I can understand that. Well, we could probably start to wrap this up. Back in 1962, when you first moved into our town here, what was their main focus back then?
Well, I don't know, because I was busy raising 3 children. My youngest was 1, my oldest was 6. So I really didn't, and I worked full-time for my husband. I didn't really have the time to get involved in things that were going on in the town. The only thing I did was I was on the Volunteer Ambulance Corps for almost 7 years. But other than that, I pretty well just got started in this civic arena 8.5 years ago.
Well, with this 300-year anniversary, with the planned festivities, have you felt a sense of town spirit?
Well, among some people, yes. Among some people, no. There are a lot of people that I know who have been here many years, as I have, and we're very sad at the things that are coming into the town now. We all agree that 287 is certainly a deficit. And I don't know, I just feel a great deal of sadness. You could not raise children the ages that mine were when we moved here. You could not raise them that way today.
Well, you certainly have provided us with a lot of interesting information, and I hope our friends at home will contact Carolyn, president of Vocal and author of the weekly column, Vocal View, in the Suburban News. And we look forward to reading your column. And
for which I don't get paid.
Which you don't get paid.
I wanted to make that clear, because some people think I do get paid for writing the column, but I don't. It's a labor of love.
Stay tuned, and we'll return after this public service message.
Someone out there needs help, and you've decided to save them. Every year, thousands of people die waiting for organ and tissue transplants. To be a donor, even if you've signed something, you must tell your family now so they can carry out your decision later. Otherwise, it's like throwing a 12-foot rope to someone who's 15 feet away. Share your life. Share your decision.
Welcome back to the Oaklander. Our next guest is no stranger to the kids in town. He's the head of the reading department at our Valley Middle School. He is also the director of the Valley Middle School Community Service Project, where he's taught for 31 years. And here to tell us more about the plans for this year is Mr. C. Tucker Platt. Welcome to the Oaklander, Mr. Platt.
Thank you, Al.
How did the idea for the 8th grade community service project come about?
In the fall of '93, Dr. Heflick, who is our principal, came to me and said, Tuck, we need to get the students of Valley School more involved, not only in their school activities, but also in the community. And I said, what a great idea. So they charged me, and the they is Mr. K, who is our superintendent, Mr. Kazanzak, and my supervisor for the district gave me some extra time so that I could examine what's going on in Bergen County with junior high school students who are volunteering to do work for people who need help. And so I spent the fall of '93 going to all different kinds of organizations and county meetings. And fact is, I even went out of the county, out to Morris County, to find out what was going on. And then after I had done a great deal of research during the fall, early part of the winter, in January of '94, I made a presentation to the Board of Education, and they thought that the idea was great. They were totally behind us. And the next step was a workshop with the Board of Education to work out some of the little innuendos and things that needed to be done. And then we went public, and our first meeting was in April with the parents. So now we're into the spring of '94, and we are ready to start our pilot project.
Okay. So you introduced the plan to the students.
Yep.
And what was their reaction to the plans?
That's an interesting one. The kids at first thought, wow, I don't think I could go ask somebody if I could help them. Maybe I should wait for them to ask me. And so we needed to get the kids to understand that the thing that they need is to be a little bit assertive and say to someone, can I help you? And that was probably the most challenging thing that I had to get the students in Valley Middle School in the 8th grade to be able to do. And one of the methods that I did that was, as I was going around to the nursery schools and to the senior citizens and to Rotary and to the church groups, asking, could we have our students come and help you and volunteer their time? I told that to the students, said, these are the people who are ready for you to come help them. And the kids all knew that that's exactly, if they talked to that person would make them comfortable enough so that they could feel that they could help. And so at the April meeting with the parents, I explained this. And the parents said, oh, well, we'll help too. So it was a combination of us in education, teachers, administrators, supervisors, and parents, and volunteer organizations in town where they could use young volunteers to help.
Okay.
And so with that combination gelling together, we were really lucky. I mean, we have a program now, Al, that you just won't believe how great it is.
Well, tell us about some of the project that the students have undertaken and what's on the agenda for this year.
Okay. Last year, in the pilot project, which finally, after all the okays and so on were taken care of, and the Board of Education gave its final blessing, every student was asked to give 2 hours of community service. So they came to me and asked me where they could go, and I began to give them who they could contact. And I even had some that said, even their parents came to me and says, oh, I don't think we should get involved in this. And that's a problem that, if you read the newspapers, you'll see that even Clinton is talking about how there are lawsuits where there are requirements for students to do volunteer work, with parents saying, well, why should my child go out and work for somebody for free? And some of the students even said that. But once the ball got rolling and the kids got involved, 100% of the 8th graders that graduated Valley Middle School in 1994 had done 2 hours of community service. Now let me tell you some of the things that they did.
Okay.
I had one child who spent 40 hours of pet training for the senior citizen nursing home here in town. So that's a lot. She only needed to do 2, and she did 40 hours of pet training. I had 8 students volunteer to be waiters and waitresses at the senior citizen dinner. I had students who were willing to walk dogs for people, take out the garbage for the lady next door, shovel the walk, mow the lawn, rake the leaves. Now, these are kids that were a little bit hesitant, saying, you know, how do I go, Mr. Platt? How do I
Sure.
get involved? And by the time the ball started to roll, it really took off. Now, I have to tell you something about in 1995, okay? That's this
Okay.
year. This year, what we've done is we've charged the kids, so to speak, that they have 10 hours of community service to do. And they don't only have to do it in the community, they can move out of the community. When I presented it to those students and their parents, again this year, we've got candy stripers at age 13 ready to go into training at Valley Hospital. We've got a program called One-to-One, where an 8th grade student gives their time to help a younger child with their homework. Now that's
Okay.
like almost unbelievable to have the kids volunteer their time to do that. We've
Sure.
also got a project called Pride, where the students are helping other students who are having a conflict resolve that conflict by talking about it rather than by fisticuffs.
That brings me to another issue. I'm sure that the students have an issue that they may feel a little closer to, something that they can relate to their peers. Is there one special type of an issue that they feel close to?
Yes. I think that the issue I see right now, the issue that they're close is they want to be involved with someone who is either younger or the same age as them, and they're helping them. Now, the Toys for Tots program, we have that running at the present time in Valley Middle School. And an offshoot from that was one of the boys who was involved in the Toys for Tots and going around his neighborhood collecting toys and bringing them to our school so that we could send them out for the Toys for Tots program, was, why don't we collect winter coats? So we collected winter coats. We contacted Eva's Kitchen down in Patterson.
Mm-hmm.
We had the school bus, half of it filled with winter coats and blankets. 6 or 8 students piled in with the coats and blankets. We must have had close to 400 coats and blankets that we took to Eva's Kitchen. Just did it.
Would you say that's the most challenging project that the kids have undertaken?
No. The project that they went into was Tomorrow's Children. And Tomorrow's Children, as you know, is the cancer care program for children.
Okay.
And our students, one of our students, a boy who was involved in the Toys for Tots, got involved in the cancer care program and in helping those children who have cancer. And they're called Tomorrow's Children. And he has already done about 15 hours of community service.
So I would say that the Community Service Project has inspired a surge in positive role models within their own
absolutely.
peers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because so often we hear, oh, the kids don't care anymore, and, oh, they always are getting into trouble, and they're always causing problems. And at Valley Middle School, we don't find that. And I think that a lot of that is because we really care what our kids in Oakland are doing. I mean, we really, really care. And we've got 60 teachers at Valley School who are behind the Community Service Project.
What part do you see the community playing in the Community Service Project?
Okay, what I need the community to do is to call the school and say, I'd like to have a volunteer help me do such and such. And the more volunteers that I can get out into the community as children, the more people who call me and say, do you have any student that could help me do this? I own a nursery school, and I'd like to have a student come and read to the kids in the nursery school.
So-
They need to call me, and I'll hook them up.
So if a group or a person need a volunteer, this is what they should do?
That's it. They call Valley Middle School, or they can call a number which we have set up, 337-4040. We have a fine lady who manages that phone, and she makes sure that I answer all the calls.
Well,
Yeah. It really is a dynamite program now. You cannot believe and how excited we are. We had last year, we had a big T-shirt signing party, and we had...
I remember that well.
Right, we had a gentleman who volunteered to give us some patches for our T-shirts, and the kids wore them very proudly, and well, I'm excited about it, as you can tell, and we are excited at Valley Middle School, and we have the backing of Mr. Kay, we have the backing of Dr. Heflick, Mrs. Kirshner, who is the department chairman. I mean, there's just a myriad of people, and the Board of Education has been very, very supportive.
That sounds like a wonderful project. In closing, I would like to thank our guests, Carolyn Karg, President of Vocal and author of Vocal View, and C. Tucker Platt, Director of the Valley Middle School Community Service Project, for being our guests on the Oaklander. I would like to thank Ellen Adler, our TCI instructor, whose help in this project has been immeasurable. To all of my new friends of OK TV Productions for their commitment and their energy to create this show. To Cliff Jackson, Hal Ritteman, and my wife Elizabeth for all their inspirations. And finally, if you would like to promote a volunteer or a nonprofit organization, if you have a question or a comment, please contact us at The Oaklander, P.O. Box 312, Oakland, New Jersey, 07436. We leave you now with music by the Breedles. I'm your host, Al DiGiacomo. We'll see you next time.